I never
Con ta không có
imagined
quyền
that
ở
a
đây.
single night at
Im ngay.
Eclipse would
Tôi sẽ không dung thứ
unravel
cho
my
chuyện này.
carefully
Cô ấy
guarded
phải đi ngay.
life,
Đúng rồi,
but that's
đúng rồi.
exactly what happened. My name is Ava Johnson, and at 42, I've learned to navigate the world as a black woman in Los Angeles with a quiet resilience born from too many disappointments. By day, I'm an assistant in a logistics office, shuffling papers and coordinating shipments to pay the bills. By night, I work as a server at this upscale rooftop bar on the 30th floor, overlooking the glittering freeways that snake through the city like rivers of light. The extra shifts help cover the mounting medical debts for my mother back in Atlanta, who's been battling heart issues since my divorce 5 years ago. That marriage ended in a blur of arguments and empty promises. My ex always said I deserved better, but he never stuck around to prove it. So, I keep my head down, my hair tied back neatly, and my black uniform crisp, serving drinks to the elite who treat places like this as their playground. Eclipse was buzzing that evening, the kind of night where the electronic music pulsed just loud enough to drown out the shady deals happening in the corners. The air smelled of expensive cologne mixed with the faint tang of spilled cocktails, and the crowd was a mix of influencers, businessmen, and those who pretended to be both. I was behind the bar, balancing a tray of martinis, when I first noticed him, Jamin Han. At 35, he owned the chain of restaurants that included this bar, but everyone in the underground circles whispered he was more than that, a Korean power player in the city's shadowy networks, with a reputation for running things that weren't exactly legal. He sat at the VIP table in his sharp black vest and tie, exuding that cold, calculated aura. Next to him was Lena, his official girlfriend, a young model with flawless makeup, red lips that screamed for attention, and a knack for posing perfectly for selfies. She laughed at the right moments, but her eyes darted around like she was always performing. I didn't pay them much mind at first. My focus was on surviving the shift without incident. But then came the trouble, a drunk patron, the type with a fat wallet and zero manners, who grabbed my sleeve as I passed his table. His breath reeked of whiskey, and his grip was tight enough to wrinkle my shirt. "Hey, sweetheart, get me another bottle," he slurred, his eyes lingering too long on my curves. "And, you free tonight? You look like you could use some fun." I pulled my arm back gently but firmly, forcing a professional smile even as my stomach twisted. I'd dealt with this before, men who saw a black woman in a service role and assumed I was there for more than drinks. "I'll bring the bottle right over, sir," I said evenly, "but questions like that aren't on the menu here." He laughed, loud and mocking, drawing eyes from nearby tables. "Oh, come on, don't be so uppity. Working as a server and acting all high and mighty? Or are you holding out for that Asian boss of yours to sponsor you?" His words hung in the air like a slap, laced with that familiar mix of racism and entitlement. My fingers whitened around the tray, and for a split second, I felt the old anger rise, the kind that came from years of being dismissed, overlooked, or worse. But I couldn't afford to snap. One wrong move, and I'd lose this job, and with it, the money for Mom's treatments. The room seemed to quiet around us, or maybe it was just the blood rushing in my ears. Then, from the VIP section, I heard a glass clink sharply against the table. Jamin stood up, his movements deliberate, like a predator uncoiling. His security detail shifted, but he waved them off. The manager hurried over, whispering, "Mr. Han, let me handle this," but Jamin ignored him, his dark eyes fixed on the drunk. He approached with that unhurried stride, stopping just close enough to tower over the man without invading space. "Excuse me," Jamin said, his voice low and edged like steel, each word precise. "The staff here works for me. They're not here to entertain you. If you can't respect that, you can leave. Now." The drunk blinked up at him, face reddening. "You're defending a waitress in front of your own girlfriend? What, you got a thing for her or something?" Jamin's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened slightly. "Exactly," he replied, the word cutting through the tension like a knife. Lena, still at the table, forced a smile, but I caught the flicker of irritation in her eyes as she pretended to scroll through her phone. The drunk muttered something under his breath but grabbed his coat and stumbled out, the door swinging shut behind him. The bar's hum resumed, but I felt every eye on me, judging, whispering. I turned to Jaemin, my heart pounding. "Thank you," I said quietly, "but you didn't have to do that. I could have handled it." He met my gaze for the first time that night, his usually icy eyes softening just a fraction. "I protect my employees," he said simply, then turned back to his table without another word. The rest of the shift blurred by, but as closing time approached, I couldn't shake the encounter. After wiping down the bar, I brewed a fresh pot of black coffee, strong, no sugar, the way I'd seen him drink it before. On impulse, I carried a mug over to his table, where he sat alone now, Lena having left early. "I figured you might need something to stay sharp instead of another drink," I said, setting it down. "Call it a thank you." He looked at the mug, then up at me, holding my eyes longer than necessary. From across the room, I saw Lena's friend glance our way, her lips pursed. The whispers started then, faint but unmistakable. Little did I know, that one act of kindness would spark a chain of events that would pull me into his world, challenging everything I thought I knew about trust, judgment, and maybe even love. After that night, Eclipse felt different to me, like the air had shifted just enough to make everything feel off balance. I went back to my routine, days buried in spreadsheets at the logistics office, nights dodging spills and egos at the bar, but the whispers followed me. Colleagues would glance my way during breaks, murmuring about how the boss stepped in for her. I ignored it as best I could. At 42, I'd learned that paying attention to gossip only gave it power, especially when you're a black woman in a place like this, where people already assumed you were either invisible or up to something. But deep down, it gnawed at me, reminding me of all the times I'd been reduced to a stereotype, the strong one who didn't need help, or worse, the one who must be scheming for it. The changes started small, almost imperceptible at first. Whenever the VIP table buzzed for service, the manager would nod at me specifically, even if it wasn't my rotation. "Ava, handle Mr. Han's order," he'd say, his tone casual but insistent. I'd nod and go, tray in hand, feeling a mix of reluctance and curiosity. Jaemin was always there, his presence like a quiet storm, vest impeccable, eyes scanning the room as if calculating every angle. Lena was often draped beside him, her laughter a little too bright, her hand on his arm a little too possessive. But when I approached, his gaze would lift, meeting mine with that subtle softening I'd noticed before. One evening, about a week after the incident, I set down his usual Scotch neat. Before I could turn away, a steaming mug of black coffee appeared on my tray, brewed by the barista, but I knew who'd requested it. "For you," Jaemin said quietly, sliding it toward me without fanfare. "You look like you've been on your feet too long." I paused, surprised. No one at Eclipse ever thought about the server's needs, we were part of the scenery. "Thanks," I murmured, taking it. The warmth seeped through the ceramic, chasing away the chill from the rooftop breeze. Lena shot me a quick look, her smile tight, but she said nothing, flipping her hair and pulling out her phone for another selfie. From then on, the coffee became a ritual. I'd find it waiting at the end of my shifts, or sometimes midway through a busy night, placed discreetly on the bar with a simple note, "Take a break." I didn't know what to make of it. Was it pity? Gratitude for not making a scene that first night? Or something else? My ex had started with small gestures too, flowers, late-night texts, before it all soured into control and abandonment. I wasn't about to let history repeat, especially with someone like Jaemin, whose world was laced with rumors of underground deals and power plays that could swallow a person whole. But the conversations crept in anyway. One slow Tuesday, after the crowd thinned, I wiped down a table near his and caught him staring out at the city lights, his scotch untouched. "You don't strike me as the type to linger here every night," I said, keeping my voice light. "Don't you have somewhere better to be?" He turned, his expression unreadable at first. People only go home when someone's waiting, he replied, his accent faint but deliberate, like he chose each word carefully. I don't. The honesty hit me unexpectedly. I leaned against the railing, the wind tugging at my apron. Sounds familiar, I admitted. My place is just a bed and bills waiting to be paid. Mom's in Atlanta, calling every other day to ask if I'm eating right. I didn't know why I shared that, maybe the exhaustion, or maybe because his eyes didn't judge, just listened. He nodded slowly. Family pulls, even from afar. It was the first real crack in his armor, a glimpse beyond the Mafia whispers. We didn't talk long, but it planted a seed. The real turning point came a couple of weeks later, on a night when the bar closed late after a private event. My old Honda wouldn't start in the parking garage, battery dead, or maybe the alternator finally giving out. I popped the hood, flashlight from my phone illuminating the grimy engine, cursing under my breath. Not tonight, come on, I muttered, the cold concrete echoing my frustration. It was past 2 a.m., and the thought of waiting for a tow in this empty lot made my skin crawl. Too many stories of women like me ending up as headlines. Headlights swept across the garage as a sleek black SUV pulled up. Jamin stepped out, Lena already in the passenger seat, her silhouette impatient. He must have seen me from the elevator. Problem? He asked, approaching without hesitation. It's fine, I said quickly, wiping my hands on my jeans. I'll call for help. He glanced at the engine, then back at me. Let me take a look. Before I could protest, he rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms marked with faint tattoos, the kind that hinted at a past I didn't want to pry into, and leaned in. Lena watched from the car, her window cracked, but she stayed silent, arms crossed. After a minute, he straightened. It's the battery. Won't fix itself tonight. He turned to his driver, a burly guy who'd been hovering discreetly. Drive her home. I'll catch a ride later. I shook my head. Really, Mr. Han, you don't have to. Jamin, he corrected, his voice firm but not unkind. And yes, I do. It's not safe out here this late. He pulled a thermos from the car, his own coffee stash, and handed it to me. Take this. You look like you need it more than I do. Lena's door opened then, her heels clicking sharply on the concrete. Jay, we're already late, she said, her tone sweet but edged with annoyance. She glanced at me like I was an inconvenience, her eyes flicking over my worn sneakers and tired face. He ignored her for a moment, holding my gaze. Get home safe, Ava. It was the first time he'd used my name, and it hung there, simple yet charged. I climbed into the SUV, the leather seats feeling foreign under me, and as we pulled away, I saw Lena slide closer to him in the rearview mirror, her hand on his knee. But his eyes were on the retreating garage, not her. That night, sipping the coffee in my quiet apartment, I felt a pull I couldn't name, a mix of gratitude and wariness. These small acts were bridging a gap I hadn't asked to cross, but with each one, the distance between us shrank, invisible threads weaving through the chaos of my life. Little did I know, those threads would soon tangle into something far more complicated. The whispers turned into a storm faster than I could brace myself for it. At first, they were just sidelong glances and hushed conversations in the staff room, nothing I hadn't endured before as a black woman in spaces where I was expected to blend into the background. But after Jamin's gestures piled up, the coffees, the late-night rides, the quiet conversations, they morphed into something sharper, more accusatory. I'd catch snippets during smoke breaks, look at her, thinking she's special now. Or worse, must be nice, using her experience to snag the boss. Age before beauty, right? The words stung like salt in old wounds, reminding me of every time I'd been labeled too much or not enough, too old, too black, too divorced, too burdened by bills and a sick mother to be anything but pitted or suspected. I tried to shake it off. At 42, resilience was my armor. I'd built it from years of proving myself in jobs where I was the only one who looked like me. Days at the logistics office were a grind of emails and manifests, a numb routine that kept the lights on. Nights at Eclipse were supposed to be the same, just serve, smile, and survive. But now, every shift felt like walking a tightrope. The manager started assigning me more VIP duties, which only fueled the fire. "Ava's got the golden touch," one bartender quipped behind my back. I pretended not to hear, but inside, doubt crept in. Was I encouraging this? Was Jamin's attention a trap, pulling me into his shadowy world of rumored deals and dangers? The breaking point came one afternoon when I ducked into the staff lounge for a quick break before the evening rush. The room was half full, servers chatting over lukewarm coffee, uniforms rumpled from the heat. I was reaching for my locker when I overheard it, clear as day. "She's gotta be sleeping her way up." From waitress to what, the boss's side piece? At her age? Come on, that's desperate. Laughter erupted, sharp and mocking. Yeah, and with a Mafia guy? Risky move. Bet she's after his money to pay off those hospital bills for her mom. My hand froze on the locker handle, my face burning. They didn't even bother lowering their voices. To them, I was just fodder for gossip, not a person with a life fraying at the edges. I stepped back quietly, heart pounding, and slipped out without a word. But the damage was done. That night, as I carried a tray to the VIP section, my hand shook slightly. Jamin was there, alone this time, his tie loosened after what looked like a long meeting. Lena arrived fashionably late, sliding into the booth with a flourish, her dress hugging her curves like it was painted on. She caught my eye as I set down their drinks, her smile all teeth. "You're doing great tonight, sis," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Not everyone gets the boss's personal chauffeur service. Must be nice." I kept my expression neutral, years of practice kicking in. "Just doing my job," I replied, turning to leave. She leaned forward, her whisper just loud enough for me to hear over the music. "Is it, though? On the clock or off? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're aiming for a promotion that's not on the menu." Her words landed like a gut punch, echoing the staff's taunts. I felt exposed, reduced to a cliché, the older black woman scheming for a handout. My tray clattered slightly as I set it down harder than intended, drawing a few glances. Jamin looked up, his brow furrowing, but I didn't wait for him to intervene. I walked away, the rooftop's cool air doing nothing to ease the heat rising in my chest. The misunderstandings escalated from there. A few days later, during a routine electrical maintenance, the bar closed early. The manager pulled me aside as the last patrons filed out. "Ava, if you want to stick around and help tidy up, you're welcome to crash in the upstairs lounge afterward. Sofa pulls out, better than trekking home at this hour." Upstairs was Jamin's domain, private offices, a small resting area for late nights. I'd never been up there before, but exhaustion won out. After scrubbing counters and stacking chairs until my arms ached, I collapsed on the sofa in the side room, the city's hum faint through the windows. Sleep came fast, my body too tired to fight it. I woke disoriented, the room dimly lit by a desk lamp. Jamin was there, shrugging off his jacket, a stack of papers in hand. He must have come back for work. Seeing me curled up, my apron discarded on the floor, he paused. "Ava?" His voice was soft, surprised. I sat up quickly, smoothing my hair, embarrassment flooding me. "I'm sorry, I must have dozed off. The manager said it was okay. I'll get out of your way." He shook his head, picking up my fallen jacket and draping it over my shoulders. The gesture was gentle, almost tender, but it sent a jolt through me. "Stay. It's late. The streets aren't safe right now." He sat at the desk, not too close, but the air felt charged. Half asleep, my filters down, I blurted out what had been festering. If I stay, won't people think I'm, trying to sleep my way into something? They already talk. He went still, his pen hovering over a document. After a long beat, he said, what people think is their problem. Not yours. Or mine. I just want you safe. His words hung there, simple yet weighted, like he was offering more than shelter. We didn't touch, didn't cross any lines, just sat in that quiet space, the city lights flickering outside. But in my haze, I felt a vulnerability I hadn't allowed in years. Morning brought the fallout. My phone buzzed with notifications from the staff group chat as I headed home. Saw Ava's stuff upstairs last night. Guess who's cozy with the boss? Overnight shift, huh? Bold move. At her age? Desperate times. Screenshots of memes followed, crude jokes about cougar hunting and Mafia mistresses. My stomach churned, tears pricking my eyes as I scrolled in the back of a rideshare. I'd been reduced to a punchline, my hard work overshadowed by assumptions rooted in racism, ageism, and jealousy. Was this what getting close to Jamin meant? Dragging my name through the mud? That evening, I arrived at Eclipse with a knot in my gut. Jamin was at his table, signaling for me as usual. But I avoided his section, busying myself with other tables, my smiles forced. He noticed, of course, his eyes followed me across the room. Later, as I clocked out, my phone lit up with a text from him, we need to talk. After your shift? I stared at the screen, fingers hovering. Part of me wanted to explain, to vent the hurt building inside. But the gossip, the stares, it was too much. I typed back a single word, no. And for the first time in weeks, I left without looking back, the weight of unspoken wounds pressing down like an invisible barrier between us. The storm finally broke, and it hit harder than I could have prepared for. The days after I sent that curt no to Jamin blurred into a haze of avoidance and inner turmoil. At work, I buried myself in the logistics office, staring at screens until my eyes burned, trying to forget the gossip that now felt like a noose tightening around my neck. Nights at Eclipse were worse, I switched sections when possible, keeping my head down, but the stares followed me like shadows. At 42, I'd faced prejudice before, the subtle dismissals in meetings, the assumptions that I was angry when I stood up for myself. But this was personal, twisting my quiet existence into something scandalous, all because of a few kind gestures from a man whose world I never asked to enter. The investigation hit like a thunderclap. One afternoon, as I was clocking in early for my shift, 2 plainclothes detectives from the LAPD showed up at the bar, badges flashing discreetly. The manager pulled me into the back office, his face pale. They want to talk to you, Ava. Something about Mr. Han's activities. My stomach dropped. I'd heard the whispers about Jamin's underground dealings, money laundering through the restaurants, connections to shadowy figures, but I'd pushed them aside, telling myself it didn't involve me. Now, here I was, sitting across from 2 stone-faced officers in a cramped room that smelled of stale coffee and stress. One of them, a grizzled man with a notepad, leaned forward. Ms. Johnson, we're looking into some financial irregularities tied to this establishment. Your name came up in the surveillance logs. He slid a photo across the table, a grainy still from the security cameras, showing me entering the upstairs lounge that fateful night, Jamin following later. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I was just resting after a long shift. The manager okayed it. Nothing happened. The other detective, a woman with sharp eyes, raised an eyebrow. And your relationship with Mr. Han? We've noted multiple instances of you in close proximity, late-night conversations, him providing transportation. Care to explain? Heat flooded my face, a mix of anger and humiliation. There's no relationship. He's my boss. He helped me out a few times, coffee, a ride when my car broke down. That's it. But even as I said it, I knew how it sounded, convenient, suspicious. They exchanged glances, the kind that screamed they didn't buy it. Look, I added, my voice steadying, I'm a single mom paying off medical debts for my mother in Atlanta. I work 2 jobs to make ends meet. I don't have time for whatever you're implying. They jotted notes, thanked me curtly, and left, but the damage rippled out. By evening, the staff chat was ablaze again. Cops were here asking about Ava and the boss. Told you she's involved. Wonder if she's snitching or sleeping her way out of trouble. I read the messages in the locker room, my hands trembling as I tied my apron. The words blurred through unshed tears, reduced once more to a stereotype, the black woman entangled in drama, her integrity questioned because she dared accept kindness from the wrong person. That night, the bar was packed, the music throbbing like a headache. I was midway through my shift when Lena sauntered in, her presence like a spotlight. She made a beeline for the VIP area but paused at the bar, leaning in close enough for her perfume to choke me. Evening, Ava, she said, her voice laced with mock cheer. Heard the police paid you a visit. Congrats, you've gone from server to star witness. Or is it something more? Must feel good being his weak spot. I gripped the edge of the counter, forcing myself to meet her eyes. I'm not anyone's anything, I replied quietly. Just trying to do my job. She laughed, low and cutting, drawing a few curious looks. Oh, honey, we both know that's not true. From what I hear, you're the reason he's distracted lately. Trading up from a model to, well, you. Bold choice. Her words sliced deep, echoing every insecurity, my age, my race, my struggles painted as ammunition against me. My hand shook as I poured a drink, spilling a drop on the bar. The knot in my chest tightened. I wanted to snap back, to defend myself, but years of biting my tongue held me in check. Before I could respond, Jamin appeared at the edge of the bar, his expression darkening as he caught the tail end of her words. The room seemed to hush around us, the music fading into the background. Lena, he said, his voice calm but edged with steel, that's enough. She spun toward him, her smile faltering but defiant. Oh, come on, Jay. Everyone's talking. You defend her in front of the whole bar, give her rides, let her crash upstairs? What am I supposed to think? That you're just being charitable to some older black waitress with baggage? The slur hung there, raw and ugly, and I felt the air leave my lungs. Heads turned, patrons, staff, everyone frozen in that awkward limbo of witnessing drama. My face burned, tears threatening, but I stood tall, refusing to crumble. Jamin stepped forward, his eyes locking on hers. I said, enough, he repeated, louder this time. You've got it wrong, all of it. Lena crossed her arms, her voice rising. Wrong? You're ditching me for her? Admit it, you're scared people will find out you've gone soft for someone like that. The bar went silent, the weight of her words crashing down. Jamin's jaw clenched, but when he spoke, it was measured, each syllable deliberate. I've never been anyone's real partner, Lena, not in the way that matters. But if anyone here deserves respect, it's her. He turned slightly, addressing the gawking staff and patrons. Ava's the only one who's ever said no to a rude customer just to keep her dignity intact. She's worked harder than anyone in this room without asking for a damn thing. And if I hear one more word, side piece, desperate, anything, about her, the first to go won't be her. It'll be you. His gaze swept the room, landing on the whispering clusters. All of you. A murmur rippled through the crowd, some faces flushing with shame, others averting eyes. Lena stood there, stunned, then grabbed her purse and stormed out, the door slamming behind her. The tension lingered, but slowly, the music swelled again, conversations resuming in hushed tones. I couldn't stay. I bolted for the back balcony, the cool night air hitting me like a slap. Leaning against the railing, I let the tears come, hot, angry streams for every slight, every assumption that had piled up. Footsteps approached, and I knew it was him before he spoke. "Ava," Jamin said softly, stopping a respectful distance away. "I'm sorry. For all of it." I wiped my eyes, turning to face him. "You didn't have to do that, defend me like some damsel. I've handled worse." My voice cracked, the hurt spilling out. "But why? I'm just a server, a 42-year-old woman with a sick mom and a mountain of debt. You. The city fears you. Why stand up for me?" He stepped closer, his usual composure cracking. "Because for the first time, someone stands by me without wanting something, money, power, status. Just coffee and a real conversation. No games." He paused, his eyes searching mine. "I don't care what they think of me. But seeing them drag you down because of my mistakes? That I can't stand." I shook my head, emotions swirling. "And that night upstairs? Do you regret letting me stay?" He exhaled slowly. "My only regret is not shielding you from this sooner. You shouldn't have to face it alone." In that moment, the barriers crumbled. The gossip, the investigation, the judgments, they faded against his quiet sincerity. For the first time, I saw not the Mafia boss, but the man beneath, and it terrified me as much as it drew me in. In the weeks that followed that balcony confrontation, Eclipse transformed in ways I hadn't anticipated. Jamin began pulling back from the shadows that had defined him, handing off the murkier parts of his operations to trusted associates. Nothing dramatic, no grand announcements, just quiet shifts that rippled through the staff like aftershocks. The bar felt lighter, the late-night meetings in the back rooms less frequent, replaced by actual business discussions about expansions and menus. I heard from the manager that the police investigation had fizzled out, lacking evidence to stick, but Jamin's changes weren't just for show. He was rewiring his life, one decision at a time, and I couldn't help but wonder if our encounters had played a part in it. I took a short leave after the blow-up, officially for personal reasons, but really to let the gossip die down and give myself space to breathe. At home, I spent days on the phone with Mom, her voice frail but probing over FaceTime. "Baby, you sound different," she'd say, her eyes searching the screen from her Atlanta nursing home bed. "Is there someone?" "You deserve that, Ava, someone who sees you." I'd laugh it off, changing the subject to her treatments or the latest bill I'd paid, but her words lingered. At 42, with a failed marriage behind me and a life built on survival, I'd convinced myself that love was a luxury I couldn't afford. Yet here I was, replaying Jamin's defense in my mind, his voice cutting through the noise like a lifeline. When I returned to Eclipse for evening shifts, I stuck to the quieter hours, after the peak crowd had thinned. The staff treated me differently now, some with awkward apologies mumbled in the locker room, others with respectful distance. No more whispers, at least not to my face. One night, as I wiped down the bar, Jamin appeared earlier than usual, his tie absent, sleeves rolled up. He didn't sit at VIP, instead, he perched on a stool at the counter, watching me work. "Welcome back," he said simply, his eyes holding mine. I set a fresh cup of black coffee in front of him, the steam curling up like a peace offering. For the man reforming his empire, I teased lightly, my voice steadier than I felt. He chuckled, a rare, genuine sound that softened his features. "And for you?" he asked, sliding the cup back toward me. "For the woman old enough to be half the staff's mom," I replied, winking to mask the vulnerability. But as I took a sip, our fingers brushed, and the spark was undeniable, a quiet electricity that had been building since that first night. From there, a new habit formed, as natural as breathing. After the last patrons left and the lights dimmed, we'd linger at a table by the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled below like a blanket of stars. No alcohol, just coffee for him, chamomile tea for me, the steam mingling with the faint jazz playlist I'd convinced the manager to add. We didn't dive into grand confessions, instead, we shared the fragments of our lives that we'd kept hidden. One evening, as rain pattered against the glass, I opened up about my ex. He promised the world, I said, staring at my cup. But when Mom got sick and the bills piled up, he bailed. Said I was too much, too focused on survival, not enough on him. My voice cracked slightly, the old hurt surfacing. At my age, you start believing maybe they're right. Maybe you're past your prime for second chances. Jamin listened without interrupting, his gaze steady. When I finished, he leaned forward. My brother emails from Seoul, he shared, his accent thickening with emotion. Tells me not to die before living a decent life. I built all this, money, power, but it's empty. No one waits for me at home because I've never let anyone close enough. He paused, tracing the rim of his mug. Until now. The words hung between us, unspoken promises in the air. We didn't label it, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. It was just us, two people who'd seen too much of the world's ugliness, finding solace in the quiet. He'd wash glasses behind the bar sometimes, his hands efficient from years of handling far more dangerous things, while I'd tease him about learning to go legit. You're getting soft, Mr. Han, I'd say, and he'd smile, that rare, full one that made my heart skip. Small gestures became our language. Mornings after late shifts, I'd find a bag on the bar, fresh pastries and a thermos of coffee, with a note in his precise handwriting, don't skip breakfast. J. In his office, I'd leave books from my collection, worn paperbacks on redemption and starting over, with margins scribbled in pencil, read this part, it'll make you see why people stay, even when it's scary. Jamal, the new security guy, a young black kid fresh out of community college, caught on quick. Ms. Ava, he'd say with a grin, boss man's different since you came back. Less scary, more human. Not everything was easy. The rumors lingered in the city's underbelly, whispers about the Mafia king going soft for his waitress. Mom pressed during calls, who is he, Ava? Bring him to Atlanta sometime. I'd hedge, not ready to define it, but her knowing smile said she saw through me. And Jamin? He faced his own battles, old associates questioning his pullback, the weight of a past that could resurface any day. But he pressed on, turning the bar chain into something clean, something he could be proud of. One closing night, as we locked up, the rooftop empty under a starless sky, Jamin turned to me by the door. If the rumors come back, he said, his voice low, calling you my mistress or worse, saying you're with a former thug, would you regret this? Sitting here with me? I looked out at Los Angeles, its lights pulsing like a heartbeat, thinking of the lonely nights before him, the judgments I'd internalized, the belief that at 42, love was done with me. Then I turned back, my hand finding his for the first time, warm, steady. Let them call you whatever, I said softly. To me, you're the man who saw me crying in the walk-in freezer at 2 a.m. and didn't walk away. I paused, my voice thickening with emotion. The mistake isn't my age or your past. The real mistake was me thinking I didn't deserve this anymore, a chance to be seen, to be chosen. He pulled me close then, not urgently, but like we'd been waiting for this moment. Outside, the city roared on, full of biases and noise, but in that dim bar, with the lights low and our coffees cooling on the table, we chose to stay. For the first time in years, warmth bloomed in my chest, not from survival, but from something real, something ours.